The talk is your code is flawless, but how you doing? I'm Dave Carroll. I guess sometimes people know me as the Dave Carroll. So, and this is Andrew Pla, going to be my co-host. Get it to know.
Yeah, no, it's on. Hello, hello. There we go.
So first up, we want to thank our sponsors. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be here. So be sure to go around and do the So who are we? I'm Dave, DevOps engineer, control developer, not just I develop. Also, I'm a level 10 IMDb wizard. What that means is I've got a lot of
A lot.
a lot of pop culture references, things like that. We solved an IT problem and I've been struggling with problems for over 50 years.
Yep, and I'm Andrew, and I'm the PowerShell podcast co-host, father of two. To say as I prefer humans to computers. As I've gone through my career, I've really found that I enjoy the people aspect of things and how efficient it is, and it's a good way to direct your efforts.
So one of the things we definitely want to state is we're not medical professionals. We don't even medical professionals want to be. So just
Yeah, we're going to chat about our perspectives, kind of where we're coming from, get the conversation started a little bit. Hopefully make things a little bit more approachable and big in the future.
The goals we have is we want to increase awareness and understanding of you know, mental health in general, and we also want to encourage self-care and resilience, and we want to foster inclusivity and acceptance. One of the things is that mental health is usually a stigma topic. People don't want to talk about it, but hopefully, this talk is going to help you want to be a little more open to discuss it with.
Yeah, and I think that there's no way that we could just fix things quickly. As things kind of go through the world, we're hoping to keep improving as people. And this is one small way as we take the next step. We have conversations, we put ourselves in uncomfortable positions, and we try to learn from each other.
So, again, though, I asked a little prematurely. How you doing? How you? How you there? One of the things that you don't really think about too much. I actually have a relatively young how you doing magnet on my refrigerator, and sometimes the behind time you're okay, so you're doing too well today. But it's kind of helps. So, first off, with flawless code or what could be considered perfect code, it's really a misnomer because there is no perfect code, but there's always better code, right? So
Yeah, things can always get better. You can take that next step and improve things. It's never a solved situation.
we all have, and also there's there's also no perfect person. We all have flaws and faults. So we're going to examine how one can go about writing better code and at the same time kind of see how we can be better people, with better, healthy people.
In those ways, and how we can, integrate things a little bit. And I wanted to, before we move on to the next slide, kind of talk about why do we do this talk? Where did it kind of come from? I know you reached out to me a while ago. But yeah, I guess at this point I wanted to kind of shout out to Dave. This was his idea. I'm really excited to be along for the ride with you, and it's been an awesome journey for us to kind of work on this talk together.
Yeah. So I've been always the odd character, the you're not right kind of guy for as long as I can remember. And part of this talk will be kind of discussing like our own paths to mental health, and also just um, the stuff that I went through recently for diagnostics. And we'll probably move on from that. Um, so first off, with with code, there is whether it's perfect. It's really, is it perfect for um, right now, or is it perfect for this particular thing? So, like, you in code, you want to strive for readability, you want to strive for maintainability, but sometimes you might want to do, strive for, the fewest lines of code, like with the code golf that Kevin's going to have tomorrow. So, in code golf, if you have a like a 7 or 8 line function, that's gonna not win at code golf. But if you have like the code that does the same thing as the function in like 30 characters, that's probably going to be a better chance at winning. So it's always about being subjective and contextual in writing the best code or better code. And with that, also you are contextual as well. You change daily, you grow daily, your context changes daily. Um, who you are today is different than who you were 10, maybe even 10 hours ago or 10 years ago, and you're going to be different 10 years from now. So one of the things is the how do we get to be better at writing code? Well, you got to learn the language, like PowerShell. You've got to build up your skills too. You got to learn the syntax, the terminology, and in a similar fashion, you have to learn how to introspect, yourself, and you have to, have the goal of healing and becoming a better you. And you got to build up the skills that's going to help you. Like, we're not given a manual. Like Greatest American Hero TV show from the '80s. The guy was given a superhero suit, and he was going to do great things, but he lost the manual in like the first episode. So he had to like figure out things as he goes, and that's exactly what we're all doing, figuring out things as we go. And hopefully, want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the terminology as well. Um, so something else that you can do with to write better code is to have parameter validation. Like you want to specify the required type when you're doing when you're accepting input. Is it going to be mandatory or optional? You want to use validators like validate set, validate pattern, or any other validate attribute. But what would your parameters be? Um, your input and direction from others is probably going to be a parameter. Like I need you to do this, or I want to converse with you about that particular topic. So anytime you want to take the mic away, please do so.
Um, yeah, sorry, it's a slightly clunky for me. Yeah, input and direction from others. So I guess I would ask you. So, what would the benefit of the input and direction from others be? How would you use that as input? Right? How would you use that to alter your behavior and actions and those types of things?
So I think if we're talking about something very technical, then I know I would need to put on my technical hat. If we're talking about something personal, or even comics or TV or anything like that, then that's kind of different hats that you want to put on. So um, you want to kind of tailor what your you want to focus what the on the topic itself, and that's kind of you don't want to use get 80 user to try to get computer information.
So it sounds like you're more referring to it as like input and direction from others in social situations to kind of guide you. What's appropriate here? Is it appropriate for me to do this or that? In certain circumstances, it might be, and others not. But is that what you're kind of referring to with this? Is yeah, awesome.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you don't want to. Uh, you also want to be open to actual input too, right? So you don't want to be closed off and like already defensive or anything like that. It's like, yeah. So you definitely don't want to do that. um, but how would you validate the input from others? Well, you need to define what the input needs to be. You know, just like with the validate set, you say, you know, I want only these things are going to be acceptable, and you have to define. You know, when we're talking about topics, especially topics that are going to be, you know, potentially triggering or even just talking, and then you happen to get, you know, someone has says something that kind of brings up something from your history. You want to clearly state, you know, look, I don't want to talk about this or talk about that. And uh, and most like D&D settings, Dungeons and Dragons settings now, or other tabletop role playing games, they have a thing called Session Zero, where it you basically sign up. You know, these are the topics that, you know, I'm okay with. These are the topics that I definitely don't want to deal with, or these are the topics that, you know, I'm definitely want this in my, you know, in the game or whatever. But it kind of helps put everybody on the same playing field. So you know, you won't go into, you know, a session all of a sudden, you know, they have a topic, you know, about I don't know, spousal abuse or something like that, and you go, oh, I don't really want to do that because that's too close to my, you know, too close to home, and I don't want to talk about that. All of that stuff is kind of helping define what, you know, how the communication should be engaged with.
So it sounds like in this slide we kind of have some in the input and direction from others. It sounds like some kind of self-awareness type stuff where being aware of where you are, how you're interacting, and then with the other one, clearly define the input. It kind of sounds like you're talking about setting boundaries and making sure that you're setting yourself up for success. If you know how you work best and are aware of what some of things that you struggle with are, you can put yourself in more situations to succeed and not have negative outcomes.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that we had talked about, you and I earlier, was about, you know, where are we eating, right? You know, that's one of the things that is most cringe with um, a lot of others. But you know, so what you you need to know what you need in a situation, and need to let the other people know. If you don't speak up, you know, your expectations may not be met, and it could actually cause, you know, some extra pain for you.
Yeah, and when it comes to speaking up in situations, it can personally be really hard. And I mean, just in general, it is a really hard thing. Uh, but if you're able to do it, and by doing it in a safe way and having other people see it, setting boundaries, it really provides a great level of psychological safety that just improves everything, whether that's a work context, a personal context. Um, Being able to communicate your boundaries and then respect them and understand that be a safe person that people can communicate their boundaries to you leads to a lot more positive interactions and outcomes, leads to a lot richer relationships, a lot better communication.
That's right. um, so the the next thing we want to talk about is debugging. So how you get really good code is you also go through the debugging process. You know, do you use simple console output? Do you use the right commandlets? Do you use debugging tools within your code editor? Or do you use debugging with PS breakpoints in the console? But how would you go about debugging yourself? Um, so that's going to take, you know, a lot of introspection, and you know, for you to dig into what actually was, what drives your actions and your behavior. One of the ways you can do that is through journaling, again through introspection and mindfulness, uh, paying attention to your present thoughts and your feelings about in the moment itself. It's also about health, physical health. Your physical health can directly impact your mental health as well. Like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough, the right nutrients in your diet? Are you exercising, or are you going up a mountain because Phil decided to take you up a treacherous trek? And But anyway, also it's about being open to feedback and change. It's a help you connect with others. Um, and for like debugging, you could also hire a consultant or professional help sometimes with that. It relies so much on perspective, and it's going to be it could be very challenging to consider like all of the sides of all of the pieces of the puzzle. The Another thing that you can do when you're writing perfect code is to deal with error handling. Like, how do you properly catch exceptions and errors? Hopefully we all know about the try catch finally. And also you should know about terminating versus non-terminating errors. And also you don't want to swallow up errors like in lower level code. What's displayed to the user it should be very relevant, and it needs to be concise and actionable errors. So with error handling on on the self, high anxiety or otherwise being triggered is going to be the error that you're going to have to deal with. First off, you have to realize uh, actually something happened, and I am going to be acting. I My body is going to react negatively to it. So you have to realize that. Also, when that happens, you have to kind of take a step back and just realize. So it's like the event or whatever happens in the try, and then the catch is you taking a step back and realizing, what really just happened here. Um, and I need to handle this behavior that I'm about. Need to examine the behavior, make sure that what I'm about to return into the conversation with is not going to be um, uh, disjointed or disruptive. Um, and sometimes it's hard to say, well, calm down, to other people. And sometimes you don't even think about telling yourself to calm down. So you need to examine what happened, and also determine what actually triggered it. That way you can have like an identifying thing that will help you in the future to be able to like catch that specific error type, essentially. And One of the things is, it'll also help you identify and establish boundaries, with people and in conversations. Um, yeah. So one of the things, and if you want to talk about,
Oh, sure, yeah. So there was a situation where it was a great example of my one of my first interactions with Dave, and there was a situation where he was having a conversation that wasn't the most productive. It wasn't necessarily heated, but it was a little unintentionally aggressive, I'd say. Passionate, but could a little dicey. And you went about communicating that something's not working here for me. I might need to step away from the conversation. The person who you were communicating it with was fortunately receptive to that feedback and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to come across that way." And then I think you were able to kind of come back at it, understanding each other's boundaries a little bit more. The other person you were interacting with was able to consider kind of where you're coming from and your perspective. Obviously, always different, right? And yeah, I think that it ended up in a productive conversation for you in the end. But yeah, you can speak to that a little bit.
yeah, I think it was about maybe 10 or 15 minutes into the interaction. I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. So I was already feeling the anxiety. My face was flushed, and they go, "Ah, I need to say something." And if I didn't say anything, you know, you probably would have seen it happening, but you wouldn't have been able to really do anything about it, because you didn't know if that was something that I needed to stop or if it was okay for the other guy to continue. Yeah. And we had the I stopped the conversation. We had the short discussion, and then we were like on the Zoom call for like for another hour, hour and a half, or something like that. So and by the end of that, I mean, typically that kind of conversation would usually drain me, but I wasn't actually drained at the end of this conversation. But if it had continued down the path that it was going, I would have been, completely out of it, and probably would have had to like take a nap just to recover.
Yeah, and with a situation like that, everyone wins, right? The person who you're interacting with gets some feedback on maybe some of their behavior. They get a closer relationship with you. In different contexts, this wasn't super a work context, but in a work context, they get more stuff done. And they enjoy their job more because you're interacting with people who respect you and make you feel comfortable being yourself. I will say that not easy understanding your emotions for some people, and for me, I struggle with identifying when I'm like super overwhelmed. But it's the type of thing where you can't just be aware of it. It takes some time, got to work on it. And I found that as I kind of address more efforts to it over the years, I do get better at it. But I think that's kind of a common thing where people don't always know exactly how they're feeling at times, but taking the time to reflect can be super helpful.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a skill that you're going to have to grow over time. I didn't get to the point where I can know that I'm getting triggered and actually be able to say anything about it. And those are two different types of skills as well. Like I know I'm being triggered. Well, I'm just going to let this person steamroll over me or whatever. But then it's about self advocacy that we're saying, you know what, I deserve to be treated how I wanted to be treated, and speaking up for yourself. So that's a huge deal sometimes for some like me.
Dude, it's so impressive to me how helpful this type of thing is when you actually start implementing it a little bit. Um, like to be able to have others respect you, it's kind of like all in line with respecting yourself and kind of having a more life that's conducive to you being yourself and comfortable and exploring that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do we have anything else we wanted to talk about on this?
But I'll say, yeah, that's a really awesome that you allowed that to be an opportunity because I think a lot of times in life I've seen people where they maybe aren't treated in a way they're expecting, and rather than communicating that to the other person, there's a miscommunication there because the person doesn't understand they've hurt the other one, and it's just not good. Like there's no end to that situation. Whereas with this one, there was a positive ending where people are better off for it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would like to point out, I didn't whenever I started the conversation, I didn't, or the discussion about the issue, I didn't say, you are doing this to me. I said, I feel, this is how I feel. And, using the I statements. The I statements it puts the interaction piece on you, and because that way you're not assuming that the other person is coming at it from a different angle or whatever, or with any malicious intent. You're just saying, no, this is how I feel about this particular thing at this particular time. So yeah, halting the conversation is important. Uh, being able to voice your boundaries also helps establish mutual respect. Because like if I voice my boundary and then he did not, the person did not respect that boundary, then you know the uh, the the conversation probably would have ended a lot quicker, but he didn't. So there was a lot of mutual respect on both sides, and that person also shared a little bit about their um history as well. So it was actually good, and there was a you know definitely a better bond than just two strangers on a Zoom call. Yeah, so you definitely have the right to establish boundaries, and you absolutely have the right to prioritize your well-being and to take care of yourself. Um, you know, just because, like, if you're a content creator or whatever, don't feel bad about not being able to push out content for you know a week or 2 weeks or 6 or 8 months, like me on my blog sometimes. So it's forgive yourself for some things as well. So with code, you want to have perfect code. What do you expect from your code? Well, you're going to have maybe a specific object type, or you can have a list of object types, or maybe it doesn't even do any output at all. Maybe just like set something in the registry or whatever. So with with yourself, your output is your behavior. Like how are you going to respond to certain stimuli? Um, you you should strive to be consistent with everyone around you and with yourself. Like consistency allows them to, allows others to, well, if I get into this conversation with this guy, I'm going to feel safe about talking with him or with them about things, and they're not going to, blow up in my face about things or whatever. Yeah. So there's, um, lost my train of thought there. So yeah, uh, wait, wrong one. Yeah. So I guess you want to
Sure.
add something else you wanted to add to that?
Sure. I can share a little bit about my kind of experience in this regard, and that was, you know, uh, your output is your behavior, right? So strive to be consistent with those around you and yourself. Well, to do that, I feel like you have to have a sense of self, which can be a hard thing to do. Not everyone kind of becomes an adult and has a well-established sense of self, a long experience of being able to express themselves and be validated and those kinds of things. So for me, I had to spend years kind of growing as a person and understanding who I was. And then once I discovered who I was and I didn't have to pretend, trying to like just be consistent and always the same. You just be yourself in all situations, and you're not in situations where there are expectations that are fake, right? Like you've only shown the real version of you. You haven't put on a face. And over time for me, like that kind of ties in with character, right? You're trying to have safety with people. You want to have better communications with people. How do you do that? You be consistent, you be kind, right? And it's not like I like to highlight this because it's not like a selfless thing. You massively benefit from having stronger relationships, from having that type of situation you mentioned earlier where you have a miscommunication, you talk about it, and you're closer afterwards, closer than if there would have never been an altercation of sorts. Um, yeah, I think that it's a great thing that really helps create some form of psychological safety. And I can say that as I've grown in this way and spent more time with it, it has definitely promoted personal growth and better relationships in my life.
Yep. The next thing to get better code is maybe to have someone review your code. And oftentimes there's going to be like even an official code review or whatever. You can like on GitHub when you're doing a pull request, you can have someone to actually review the code for that. And one of the things that happens in a code review is like, the reviewer should offer praise on what you did like really well. And they should also offer, places, well, you were maybe a little weak in this, or maybe, this algorithm is not the best one you should use, or, have you considered this other thing? And they provide a valuable different perspective, and they could actually like anticipate where your particular piece of code is going to need to, where it can fit into a larger system. So when we're talking about peer review with people and just mental health, is you can confide in a trusted, supportive friend or family member, and the key there is being trusted and also supportive, because if you if you know that you can't talk to Uncle John about politics, or you can't talk to Uncle and Baru about uh, about the empire or whatever. You can't you can't really um, you just have to have the right person to talk to. And when you go to that person, you need to define what you want out of the interaction, and you need to be open and honest and listen to what they're saying.
Yeah, with define your needs, that is such a big one that I learned. It's like when you're talking to someone and when people are talking to you, you don't always need to give advice. That's not always the purpose. And when you're asking and trying to get support from someone else, it can be helpful to say, "Hey, just looking to vent to somebody," not asking for life advice. And having people who can allow you to do that can validate your experience and who you are and help create that psychological safety.
Definitely. And um, of course, the a trusted friend is not always the best person to go to. Therapy or counseling from mental health professionals is probably going to be your better bet. They are trained in multiple ways of helping you, and also they're going to be much more objective to anything. Like, your friend or family is going to be very biased, and they're going to get, jump on your side. Yeah, that person was really mean, mean to you in this situation or whatever, as opposed to saying, well, your actions, you know, in some sense may have actually provoked the response that you got. So the healthcare professional is going to be very should be very objective and will help you get to where you're going to be able to help work through your own issues. And they're also, they don't have a magic wand. They're not going to tell you how to fix yourself. They're going to guide, provide guidelines and to help steer you down the right path. Um, yeah. And also they're confidential and professional boundaries. Like, so they can't talk about, when, if you're very open with, and you should be very open with their therapist. They can't, go around and tell, your cousin or whoever that, oh yeah, this guy was really saying, bashing up on you. You need to think about, something. They're not going to do that. I mean, there's laws against that. Um,
Yeah, it's hard for me to think about a situation where, imagine money is not a thing and accessibility is everywhere, but where having an outside perspective wouldn't be helpful, especially if it's a therapist that you trust and it works well for you. Even if you're not trying to heal or anything like that, you're just trying to be a more efficient human and get some extra perspectives on, hey, I'm not getting the outcomes I want at work or at my social relationships. And just getting, a lot of times having that outside perspective, even if it's only a few insights you get, can be massively helpful. And yeah, these skills are definitely worth investing in and prioritizing.
Yeah, and also one of the things I want to add to that is, um, the very first therapist you go to may not be the therapist for you. You have to kind of have a connection with them. You need to feel like they're actually the right person to help you. So if you go in a couple of sessions and yeah, I just don't really feel. I don't feel like I'm going down the right path. Change paths. I mean, that's important to know when something isn't working for you to change gears and do something else. So I think this might be the last thing that we're going to be talking about: code and people. So for better code means that it's has great documentation both internally, like your variables are named. You don't have a variable called $I. You have a variable called like dollar table list or whatever. And also you need to use context based or external help, and maybe a change log would also assist with that, or and just general documentation itself. Now for you, you should set and track goals for personal growth. Do you want to tell them how to be smart? Yeah. So I don't know if you've had to deal with SMART goals in your work, but basically, SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So, like, I think Josh does a lot of time bound learning. So he sets goals for himself and tracks those goals, with just his everyday learning. But you can do the same thing with your own mental health as well. And one of the last things you can also do, yeah, diary, journaling, or blogging. Some people may not want to put their intimate insides out on a website somewhere. So you'd want to do like the personal diary or whatever. Um, Also the vision boarding. You can put up you know basically the things that you want to change about yourself. You put them up on a board, and then did I do well on that today? Do a check mark or whatever. Um, Also, the health documents from physical and mental health professionals. Those are, actually legit documentation. Um, and the like some the any of the results, like somebody was talking about their cholesterol a couple of nights ago, I think, and said, well, I think I've got my cholesterol scores going back to like 1998, in a Google sheet somewhere. But yeah, so it's good to keep those. They will help you establish baselines. um, yeah,
I just want to say with the whole goals thing, that's great and all, but don't beat yourself up over improving in goals and thinking you should always be better and comparing yourself to others. Life can be really challenging, I've found, and always pushing yourself uh, when you're already exhausted can be tough. If you're going through a rough time, take care of yourself. Alter your goals a little bit. But to me, that's the most important part is just take care of yourself. Um,
that's true. You mentioned earlier something about psychological safety, and I think we should maybe talk a little bit about that now. Um, the You should always feel comfortable engaging, even though some topics could be uncomfortable. It's about having candor with colleagues, with kindness, but it does having psychological safety doesn't necessarily mean that kindness is going to be there. It would be nice, but it's not a requirement. Um, and also, the kind candor requires trust. I mean, like when you bring in, if you start a topic with somebody, you have to have the general feeling that they're not going to go behind your back and tell someone else, or they're not going to just start attacking you because your ideas are diametrically opposed. Um, and Also, psychological safety also reduces stress and anxiety. Like in the workplace, if you get ready to do something, and you take out, I don't know, a domain controller or something like that, having psychological safety where, like, if the organization isn't going to like be punitive because you made a mistake because you're human, then that's going to let you maybe do a little more, think outside the box and come up with new, uh, um, new ways and new solutions to things. Also, I think I just said that. Yeah. So if you actually express yourself, you shouldn't get fired, um, unless it's very, very egregious, I guess. Yeah. So one of the things I want to kind of bring up, the topic I want to bring up is being neurodivergent, and neurotypical. So in this room, there's probably, I don't know, I don't even think there would be half and half neurodivergent versus neurotypical brains. Neurodivergent brains could, we're talking about, people with ADHD. We're talking about people that's on the autism spectrum disorder, or ASPE, or what used to be called Asperger's syndrome. Also, I found out recently that intellectual giftedness is also considered neurodivergent, and if discovered early on, would get, like if I was as a kid, if they discovered, if I was a kid today, they would see, oh, this guy is intellectually gifted. We need to have we need to provide a supportive system for him because of his neurodivergency. Also, neurodivergency includes, things you might have heard before, like dyslexia, OCD, bipolar, Tourette's, and several others. So it's not just about ADHD. It's not just about ASD, and things like that. Um, and then, like, what is neurotypical? Well, basically anyone who is a neurodivergent. Um, and the thing is, that doesn't mean that either one of these are better than the other ones. We need both types of people in the world. Very much so. Um,
But yeah, to me, diversity is very important in every way, from the previous jobs you've had to gender to uh, neurodivergent versus neurotypical. It's so helpful for every situation to have multiple perspectives. And it makes sense that smart organizations try to find the strengths in people and take advantage of it, right? Every single person's different. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and putting ourselves in positions to succeed, in being in cultures where you're psychologically safe enough and where people allow you to be yourself and set boundaries and communicate is really helpful.
Right. So neurodivergent individuals could also experience or can experience, um, either functional or executive functioning or emotional um, differences, sensory processing, things like that. So I just want to get to the next slide about. Uh, you may have, I don't know if you've actually realized, but there's a lot of late in life diagnoses that's been happening over the last 2 or 3 years. One of the reasons for that is, a little thing called the pandemic changed how everything happened. Virtually everything became virtual. So you had more time because you weren't maybe doing the commute or whatever, and you had more time to yourself, and also you were probably stuck in a home with other people, having to interact with them every day, every minute. And there were some relationships that just didn't, couldn't survive that. Um, and Also, there's a lot more people sharing their personal information and experiences. Like me, I mean, I'm sharing my experience here. There's like a whole group of people on TikTok that's sharing their own neurodivergent experiences. Um, so the Current studies now show that like 1 in 20 people have ADHD. 6% of that is has an official diagnosis, but even less than six of that has autism. Um, I think I got most of this from like um, a therapist that's on TikTok that does you know specific work with autistic individuals and people with ADHD, and he himself has ADHD. But one of the things here, like the last piece, the diagnostics are expensive, not covered by insurance. That is absolutely true. I recently had a diagnostic, and it was like 24.50 or something like that, that I had to pay out of pocket just find out, why am I so different? And it's not because I'm broken. It's not because aliens messed around with my parents' DNA, which I had told people since I was a kid. It's because I am an Aspi, like Asperger's syndrome. So it's like it was very validating to find out. You know what? I have. This is why I am so weird and so different, and it made me feel really great to finally have that validation. Um, and I guess the next thing is, we're going to throw out some quotes from some really smart people, like Picard. Uh, you have to measure yourself, your successes or your failures within, not from anything that I or anyone else may think. And for me, that's a huge challenge because my self worth has always been based on, can I make someone laugh, or how smart am I? How valuable am I to other people, not just I have value by myself. Also, one of the things that Picard said, it's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. And that's not a weakness, that's life. So, just because, something that you didn't work out right, it's okay that things happen like that. And you need to be able to accept things when it doesn't work out like you want. Also, the only person you're truly competed against is yourself. And I think maybe Don Jones mentioned something like that. It's like you should only ever compare yourself with your previous self. Don't compare yourself with someone else. That in of itself should help alleviate all imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome is about us, comparing ourselves like, oh my gosh, there's no way that I can ever be, on the equal of this person or that person, but guess what? They feel the same way about someone else, and someone down, that maybe knows less about you about a particular topic. They also feel the same thing about you. It's like, oh my gosh, here's the pedestal. I'm going to like worship you and things. But the thing is, it's not, when you compare yourself, always compare yourself like, have I grown since yesterday? Have I grown, since maybe breakfast, if you had a really huge breakfast? Um, But also another smart guy. You don't need to be defined by your job, said by Weird Al. So you need to have your own self identity. Also, something live the life you want to live. Be as weird as you want to be. Believe me, you will never find true happiness until you accept who you are. And that's from a new like 2023 movie, the Al Yankovic story with Daniel Radcliffe. It was awesome. If you haven't seen it, it's on Roku channel for free. So yeah, anyone have any questions? So how can you identify toxicity in the workplace? Um, what was the second part? You know, company politics or interpersonal relationships at work. So that's I don't know if we have enough time for that. But I have lucky or unlucky to be able to have been in several toxic situations before. There was one time that my entire department was split. As 12 people, we were split between the developers and the systems people. I mean, it was a legit split like that. And one of the things that, once the people that was causing that toxicity was out, then we came back together and we were a stronger, more cohesive team. And I think that's actually where I started learning about being able to speak developer as opposed to just speaking only that. And then there was another time when, yeah, that's a large topic and maybe something that should be like a blog post or something like that.
Not a good answer, but it helps to have positive experiences to be like, oh, this isn't like that one. But I think so many of us have only experienced kind of crappy work environments. So that's where I think having a community that you're part of outside of your job, where you can maybe have some friends express what's going on at work, and they can give you the perspective check of like, that doesn't sound quite right. Kind of tap into a larger perspective base. But
And any other questions? I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Um, so you mentioned that being neurodivergent doesn't mean you're broken, and that's a great point. I think a lot of times we feel like, it means we're not normal. We need to be more like other people. So I was diagnosed with ADHD last year, and I can't say that it has had a significant negative effect on my life, but knowing that I have this disorder, I guess, has allowed me to recognize when I'm hyper focusing on something and how that could influence my role at work or personal relationships, my sleep patterns, um, and it's just been really helpful. And sharing that with my coworkers, who I have that trust with, has it gives them the opportunity to recognize if I'm maybe spending a little bit too much time on this topic. Josh is hyper focused right now. You need to pull him out and work on something else, or what have you. Um, and your ADHD, your autism, what have you, it gives you advantages and you're able to do different tasks better than other people, in some cases. So I just thought that was a great point.
Just want this for the mic for prosperity.
I just want to just let you know, like, you're not alone either. Like, so many of us struggle with this in silence, and because we don't share it, we feel like it's just me. And in many cases, if the good communication, like if you feel like you're heading towards burnout, you don't have to wait to your burnout to tell your manager I'm burned out. You guys should say, I have it under control right now, but I'm getting the feeling like I'm heading down this path. Like, give them that early warning so that they know that you might be struggling a little bit before it's a real problem that you're having to really cope with. But yeah, it's easy to see me, some work I've done in the community, but you don't see I have ADHD or I've had struggles with depression myself. It's just that you don't see that side of me because of all the other things that we do in the community. Just yeah, you're not alone.
Is there any other questions, comments, anything like that? I mean, I think we've already went way over our time by like 3 minutes. So, anything else? Yes.
And speaking of like healthy work environments, my several of my managers have like given our teams permission where, if you have to like skip a meeting just to like go for a walk or whatever you do to like cope with your mental health. So for example, like for the first round, the first hour of the sessions this morning, I had to like leave and I just went and ran around in some circles in the gym just so I could like sit still and like be tentative for the rest of the day. And so even though I felt guilty for missing a really good session, I felt like it was really beneficial for my mental health and having that clarity for the rest of the day. So I think it's important to just be able to like take a time out and do whatever you need to do to give yourself that capacity to kind of like have a success, like a successful and efficient kind of day.
Sure. Is there anything else? Oh, we got one more, or maybe more.
Since we are on that topic, like Andrew was saying, I think it's really important, and as you also said, um, therapy is like better than your friends in that sense because, like Dave was saying, your friends are biased. Like, oh, I won't going to say that to not to hurt your feelings, or I think that you are not okay. So, yeah, let me try to divert that path, and that might actually be worse than actually speaking to therapy and say like, okay, this happened during this time or on this workplace. And this someone was bad, someone was mean, and they say like, but what did you say? And once you reflect on that, it's like, oh yeah, maybe I didn't say something wrong. And whereas if you speak with some friend, they will say, yeah, your colleague is really a jerk, like it doesn't deserve that, just don't mind that. um, but yeah, and also like Andrew was saying, that's the point that I want to focus the most. um, Even if it's not even if you don't feel that nothing is wrong with you, therapy can be really helpful, not only for mindfulness and reflection, but also for facts like, I'm good at something but I want to be better, or I'm really good at work but I want to improve my social skills. How can I do that? And being talking with someone from the outside, most of the time, it might be even better than talking to your friends.
Also, I can say from experience, the therapists have tools in their toolbox that they can give you that will help you cope with those things the next time. So if you're turning to your friends for help, they're gonna basically tell you what you want to hear. They acknowledge your pain, but they don't really help you move on through that. And a therapist has a lot of tools that they can turn on for you.
And there's actually different types of therapy, um, like CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, may not be the best for someone that is exceptionally gifted, because they can out the therapist would have to be able to out cognition the other person that they're actually treating. So yeah, there's again different types of therapy, but the first step is to think, I definitely need to get in front of someone who is trained to help me, navigate the difficulties of life, or whatever, with the right therapy and the right guidance.
Yeah, I think this one of the best quotes that I heard is that if you feel that your problems are like bad for you to share with a therapist, they'll think that you are insane or something like that. Uh, Most people do that, and they are trained to hear that every day. So if it helps you, think that if you think that something is really bad with you, maybe they've heard something bad or worse from someone else. But either way, they are trained. They don't judge you, like Dave said, and that's really important. It's by law they are obliged not to share anything. Everything is confidential, so you are in a safe environment for that.
Unless you have ideations of self-harm, and then in which case that will probably help you much quicker with other people being brought in, and then like a 3-day psych eval or something. So I think we're gonna wrap it up because we're already like almost 10 minutes. Oh.
Just I love to talk about the therapy stuff, but I want to go back to the workplace thing a little bit. And I think that you want friends and you want to work at a place where they want you to be your best, where they identify that in order for you to do your best work, you have to be well. And sometimes that means skipping out on a meeting. Sometimes that means being super burnt out and taking 2 weeks of work and having a manager that you can communicate that with. I guess with it, does your work care about how you feel and understand that they're trying to empower you to do great things? Do they see the value in you? Are they trying to tap into it? Are they flexible, or are they very rigid and expecting you to be this person and do things this exact way? Um, but yeah, I think our goal for this was to open the door for more conversation, add some language, get things started. And I think that appreciate everyone for listening for us and giving us that opportunity.
Yeah, and speaking of open the door, we can open the door if you're hungry and make your way to Washington.